Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlog, and this is City of Heroes soloing the Stalker. We are with Dark Phantom, who has just hit level 27. I know it says 26 on here, but that's because we haven't leveled up yet. And we're here to do that, and then we will change our enhancements over and upgrade them and everything else. So, what do we need to do? We need another slot on Siphon Life, and I think I'll put another slot on Energy Drain. And now we want to upgrade our enhancements. So right now, let's see. Let's go to a shop so that we can buy what we need. And I think quickest way is to go to Talus Island, and we will actually go to the science shop. Why not? Actually, was the science shop right across from me in Independence Port? I think it might have been. I'm trying to remember, where's the science shop is over here, I think. Right, Demos or whatever it's called. So the natural shop is on this corner over here. And science is, yep, the science shop was probably right across from the train station, and I didn't think about that. Demos. Demos Innovations is science. So let's sell our salvage, or not salvage, our these things. We have level 25 recipes, so we get rid of those. We don't need to sell any of that, I don't think. We're going to have to put some away at some point. Okay, so before we do anything, let us go to the enhancement screen, and for our existing sets, our existing enhancements, I'm happy with everything, so we can go ahead and upgrade. This will upgrade everything to level 30, and it's going to cost us 1.2 million influence. Okay, so there we go. And now we're going to need 3 more enhancements. This is going to be an endurance reducer. This is going to probably be, I mean, there is an accuracy to this. I don't know if it misses. It seems like it must, so we're going to put accuracy and a recharge on it. So we just need 1 endurance, 1 accuracy, and 1 recharge, and we need SOs. So level 30, endurance reduction, level 30, recharge, and level 30, accuracy. Which have cost us a total of about 100,000 more. So it's about 1.3 million to get a full and complete batch of level 30 single origin enhancers. What? It says it takes accuracy enhancers, doesn't it? Oh, it doesn't. Well, that was a waste. I guess I'll sell it back to him. Alright, well, if it's not going to do that, then we can just do another... Should we do another recharge on it? Or should we do an endurance modification? Let's do an endurance mod. I don't know that we need to recharge it that fast. So it recharges in 45 seconds. That's probably enough. There we go. So now it will boost, that boosts how much endurance we gain from it. We'll gain 34. And this is probably enough then. If we don't need an accuracy on it, we're probably okay with 2 slots. Yeah, it has a 1.0 accuracy, so I figured you could put accuracy enhancements on it, but apparently not. Alright, so what I have done is talked to Colin Larson and done a couple missions for him. That's how we got to level 27. And even though I didn't take this mission, the fact that I actually looked at it put me on the story arc, which is kind of annoying. But we're now on the Freak Olympic story arc, so that's one of the arcs. Other arcs in this level range include General Z, Uberman, and the Devouring Earth arc. I can't remember the name of it. So we definitely want to get those done. Probably our next one will be General Z, and then Uberman, and then if we're still below level 30, we'll do the Devouring Earth. At this point in leveling, your character is likely to be able to get about 1 story arc done roughly per level. Um, and then eventually it takes multiple story arcs to level up. So let's take a look at the level requirements because we just barely like got a few hundred experience more than what was needed to level up. And the reason was, so I saw that I needed about 2,500 XP to level up and that it was giving me 2,000 XP to finish a mission. And I got into a mission that I could stalk through and just click on things. So I stalked the mission, clicked on things, and I think I was going to beat the boss, but there wasn't a boss. But I did one of the glowies. I had to defeat a lieutenant and a minion, and those guys combined plus the 2,000 for the mission XP was just a couple hundred more than I needed. So we're really right at the beginning of the level. So you need about 135,000 XP to level up here. So let's keep an eye on how much XP white con minions give us, and we can calculate how many minions we would need to defeat, right? And then we'll look at mission XP and stuff like that. We can think about what like how much do we gain? If we started at 134.5, how much is a single mission going to get us? And we got a good sample here. We have an even level lieutenant, so we'll find out right here how much XP he gives us. Right, 600. And then an even level minion gives us 181. Right, so that's about 800 in a spawn, something like that. Ooh, running away. Such cowards. Then, of course, if they respawn, you get even more XP, right? One of the things you may have seen me do with these guys is when I'm trying to get them to go where I want them to go, I completely hide where they can't see me. That's because the AI of, if you want to call it that, of the computer control of the NPCs in the game, of the villains, is such that it will always seek to target you, right? If you back up, they'll shoot at you. They won't necessarily come in melee range. Most villains, this is actually one of the things that when COH started was fairly unique to COH. Typically, in old school MMOs, a monster would, most of the time, either be melee or ranged. Some animals would have multiple attack modes if they were powerful, but pretty typical, an enemy would be either melee or ranged. In City of Heroes, because they're all humans, a lot of the villains have both a melee attack and a ranged attack. Their ranged attack is typically weaker unless they are primarily a ranged character. But they usually have both modes, and therefore, City of Heroes tried to make it really hard to kite, right? So kiting is when you're fighting a melee individual, like this guy, and you start backing up. And a lot of times ranged characters do this, right? Shoot, run, and you try to keep it so that he can't melee you. And so what COH tried to do was to make it so that if you try to kite the primarily melee enemies, they would pull out a pistol or a rifle and shoot you. And if you went after a ranged guy and you got into melee range with him, he would pull out a knife or something and stab you, or he would punch you or try to hit you with his gun or something like that. So most of the foes have a primary and a secondary attack, just like we do. We have primaries and secondaries, right? They usually are either primarily ranged, but they have a melee, kind of a weaker melee secondary attack, or they're primarily melee and they have a weaker ranged secondary attack. And one of the things they were trying to do, I don't know that it was successful, but one of the things they were trying to do in City of Heroes was they were trying to stop the sort of meta behavior of kiting, which is pretty much based on the exploitability of computer-controlled AI, which isn't smart enough to realize what you're doing and that sort of thing. But one of the things they programmed the computer to do is not to like let you get out of sight. So if you go around a corner, right? If I stand here, this guy will keep shooting at me, right? Once he stops being afraid, he'll keep shooting at me if I stand here, right? Let's let him. He might keep shoot. See, he keeps shooting at me, right? If I back up, if I try to kite him, he's going to keep shooting at me. If I want him to get into melee range, and I don't want to run to him because there's another spawn behind him, then one of the things you can do is block his line of sight, and he will come around, right? And then I can attack him however I want. So typically what I'm doing when I do that is I see that there's another spawn behind him. I know that if I run up to him, and he's here, and there's another spawn in this area here, which there sometimes is, they will aggro to me. I don't want them to aggro to me, and he's already aggroed, so he's going to try to attack me. So I come around the corner, and I hide behind a column or a wall or whatever, and that sort of forces him algorithmically to pursue. They're not smart enough to stand there and wait for you and say, come out, wherever you are, right? Instead, they will pursue. And so knowing that, I exploit that pursuit algorithm, and I make them chase me. If I want, oops, I got to zoom in. Sorry about that, guys. If I want to do that for any reason, the way to do it is to break line of sight, and then they will run up to you until they are in line of sight, right? So if you want to melee them, what you want to do, I'm going to leave this guy out, so we're going to be ambushed here. If you want to melee them, what you want to do is run around the corner and stay right at the edge, because then they will come around and they will chase you down, right? And then they will get into melee range. So basically, at least for me, sorry, just had something to eat and I got a little frog in my throat. My way of doing it is to break eye contact with them, right? Break line of sight, and stand right around the corner. Well, let's get this guy over here so that he's safe, and then the ambush can attack me. I don't care. But again, it's the sort of thing where sometimes you see two spawns in the hallway. What do? I come right here. Right here. They can't see me, but to get to me, he's going to come. He's going to make the shortest beeline to me, which means he's going to end up right here, and then I can punch him, if that's what I want to do. Now, these guys will probably see me, but I'm going to put hide back on. Because what I can do is placate. And then that guarantees they can't see me. This Siphon Life is going to be so awesome when I have heals on it. I think I'm going to triple heal it, and it'll double the healing. And it'll be giving me like 150 hit points every time I do it. And so my experience with Quintessence Lass was that she just was always regenerating HP because it was just part of her attack chain. So these guys are going to the wrong place. And they're going to be sorry. And we hit all three of them with that really nice attack. That's why Shadow Maul is probably going to be our next damage. The next thing we slot heavily will probably be Shadow Maul. Stop running away, jerk. I mean, I guess it's self-preservation, right? You'd think at what point would these guys realize it's Dark Phantom, run? Right, just like with Silver Phoenix. They definitely should have realized it's Silver Phoenix, run. She put so many of them in jail. You would think that sooner or later they would realize, just run. I can't remember who it was that was talking about like superheroes and stuff, and they were talking about how like, why do the villains fight when, say, Captain America shows up? Why don't they just go, oh crap, it's Captain freaking America, run? right? The first 20 or 30 times somebody stops and fights Captain America or Superman or Batman, you could say, okay, well, they don't know these guys are going to wipe the floor with them, but after a while, you would think they would realize there's no winning against these guys. I remember, I think it was in the second season of the Supergirl TV show where Superman was a guest star, and these guys they stopped bank robbers and they were in a car and they got out of the car and started shooting at them, and he was like, "Why do you guys shoot at us? You know that bullets don't hurt us. Why are you shooting at us?" And I remember my best friend saying in the old TV show I guess there was a couple of scenes where the guys shoot at Superman. It doesn't hurt him. Then they throw the gun at his head and he kind of ducks his head to the side to avoid the gun. He's like, why is he avoiding the gun? Right? The actual thrown gun can't do as much damage as the bullets. If the bullets don't kill you, why are you dodging the gun? And of course, it's because the actor, if he got hit in the head with a gun, would have been hurt, right? Nowadays, they would do that with CGI, and it would make the gun break or something. Man, he did a lot of damage to me right there. Let's get some healing. There we go. That's why it's a really good power. So what I like about this character is we can regenerate our own healing with that Siphon Life while doing damage, which I absolutely love. And we can regenerate our own endurance with this energy drain. So I think this is a really good combo of primaries and secondaries. It worked really well in a Brute. I think it's working even better as a Stalker. These are great power sets for stalking. And I love the synergy of the high defense, right? 33, 35%, etc. defense, with punching them with minus 5% defense debuffs over and over again. So they're really working at like minus 10, minus 15, minus 20, which is effectively like giving me almost a 50% defense, which is great. And that Assassin's Eclipse, man, has that been our bread and butter? Not just for the assassination, but even during combat. That power is really pulling its weight. So we have 2 more hostages to save. Let's mark this elevator as the one we need, but we got to keep looking around here because we don't want to miss one of the hostages. Nope, nobody here. But I feel like I haven't cleared this whole area. There are still some spots here that haven't been looked into. So let's just check this out. In case there's a hostage. There usually is not a hostage in a place like that, but sometimes there is. And I just want to make sure that we've looked in all the little nooks and crannies. See this here? Okay, so he's just one of the runners. If you see somebody not running that's just standing there cowering, oftentimes it's a hostage whose guards have not spawned. Sometimes you can fix that by walking out and walking back into the mission, but other times you're bugged and you just got to start the mission over again. Or auto-complete it. Okay, so we still have 2 hostages that we need to rescue. Let's check this little side room. There's usually nobody in here, but sometimes there's somebody, and sometimes there's a hostage. It happens like 1 out of every 100 times on a map like this. But it does sometimes happen. There's another hostage. Okay, this is actually convenient because it's right by the elevator. I think our powers are doing great, guys. What do you say? Okay, let's take our hide off and head with him to the elevator. You coming? Yeah, leading hostages out is not my favorite. We're going to have to go through 2 levels. Now, if the ambush comes at me, that's kind of cool, but they can't hurt the hostage, so it's sort of pointless. And sometimes there is no ambush. And okay, here's one. Okay. As I've said before, this is one of these features that they tried to put into the game that sounded great, but actually didn't work well. The goal was to have it feel like you were leading the hostage out through a hail of bullets and having to protect them from that. The reality of it is that the ambushes are so half-hearted most of the time. They can't really do anything to you or the hostage. They're sort of half-baked. They aren't a real threat, and oftentimes they're late. They don't spawn. They go the wrong way. They can't find you. So, and they can't do anything to the hostage. They can't actually hurt the hostage. So, I fought one freak on the way out. What was the point of this? Really? Right? Except to make me just wander through an empty map all the way up and all the way back down. That's it. That's all we did. Just wandering through the map. And no risk. No need to do this. Originally in the game, the hostages just said thank you, and I'll find my way out from here, and vanished in all of these kinds of missions. Now again, I appreciate what they were trying to do. Conceptually, it was a cool sounding idea, and I was all in favor of it. But the actual implementation it's pretty weak. And it's weak enough that I personally would rather they just didn't have it in the game or give me the option to turn it off so that I don't have to deal with... I don't mind the ambushes, but I don't want to have to deal with running the NPC out. They could have easily just had me get ambushed after the NPC disappeared if they wanted to ambush me. Alright, just have the ambush. Have me lead the NPC to this elevator, the NPC's gone, and then the ambushes come down this corridor and come after me. That'd be fine. I don't mind the ambushes. What I mind is wandering through a map. Now when we get this next NPC, if say he's up another level, we're going to have to walk him all the way down. Right, here's an ambush that didn't find us. Right, that guy's just standing here. He was probably with the other guy being an ambusher, but he couldn't find us. Right, so if it's not going to work, there's no point to me. Right, it's not a good functioning system, so I would just assume they didn't put it into the game. And this is actually relatively unusual with City of Heroes, because they pretty much had a rule of thumb that they weren't going to put anything into the game unless it was really good and worked really well. That's why it took them so long to put capes into the game, and they didn't implement it. Well, it didn't take them that long, but they did on like the second or third update. And the reason it took them a while was because they wanted to make the capes good. They didn't want them to be, they wanted to make them flow in the wind and all this stuff, which they are. But the capes are excellent. The capes are fantastic. They did a beautiful job with these capes. So they said, you're just going to have to wait until it's right, because we don't want to put half-baked, poorly implemented stuff into our game. One of the things that was absolutely true of City of Heroes when it first came out, there were bugs, right? Of course there were going to be bugs. But that game was solid, and everything they did was implemented with quality, right? It was a quality game from the beginning. You could see that the care and love and everything else that they had put into it, and it was a solid game. Every part of it was solid. So they said, we don't want to put anything into the game that makes it be less solid. And so that's why they didn't put levels 41 to 50, because they hadn't really finished that yet. It was on the drafting board. It was maybe in early production, but it wasn't ready. So they didn't go live with it. That was why they didn't do PvP at the beginning, because they said if we're going to do it, we want it to be right. Right? So they launched with what they could make sure was right. Then they added things to the game slowly that were also well done in general. But the ambush, leading the NPCs out and doing the ambushes, that one was never really clean, in my opinion. Like, ambushes were such a cool idea, but I don't think they ever got them to work exactly right. There are a few scripted ambushes in a couple of the missions where the ambush actually works. I think the Dirge of Chaos is a great example. But, and we've done a couple of other ones. The one where it's sort of with the Magic Man. I mean, a few of those where they're scripted ambushes, those are really good. But the ones where it's just an ambush, like a generic random ambush because you're leading an NPC out, those were not well implemented at all, in my opinion. And not with the quality that we're used to from City of Heroes and all the other ways that they implemented stuff. Right? One of the things that I think it was Statesman said is when we implement something, we want people to say, City of Heroes' way of doing this is better than everybody else's, right? Or at least equal to the best. He said, I don't ever want people saying, this is a really crappy implementation of missions, or this is a really crappy implementation of the auction house, or something like that. He wanted it to be something that people could look at and say, this is well, whether you like the feature or not, this is well done, right? And I think that's true for nearly everything COH has, right? The user interface, I think the character creation is... Even modern games wish they had the kind of customization City of Heroes has. The way the power sets work, the way the XP bar even works, it's really nice. How enhancements work. When they put sets in the game, the way sets work. When they put the villain side of the game in, how the villain side worked. I mean, most of what they did, they implemented exceptionally well. And that's why I find it noticeable when there's something that doesn't really work, right? I know it may sound, somebody said in one of my videos back during the Rebirth era that like he felt like I'm just constantly complaining about the game. And the reality is I love so much of the game, it goes without comment, right? Because it's awesome and there's nothing, enough said, as they used to say in Marvel Comics, right? I don't need to say anymore. It's just 99% of the game is perfect. And I don't have to comment about it. Occasionally I'll say, hey, this is great, but I really, it should be obvious from watching it how great this game is, right? But also, the reality is, let me fight these guys first, because the other guys are going to trigger an ambush. It's often jarring to me. Oh, there's already an ambush, huh? It's often jarring to me when the features don't work, right? Because so much of this game is so darn near perfect. You just get spoiled, right? So much else works that when a feature doesn't work, it's kind of shocking, right? And even though I know it doesn't work from having, used it many times, I've done these leading the NPC out, many, many times, right? It shouldn't be that shocking, right? But it kind of is because so much of the game just works perfectly. Works as intended, works the way it should, etc. That it really is surprising when some of the features don't really work, right? Because they usually do. Come on. This guy is going to be such a pain. I was thinking about it too. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode. People used to accuse the developers of having the game cheat with runners. That is to say, it always seemed to be the case that when a guy ran, they became almost impossible to hit. And I had it happen to me. I wish I had been recording it. I had it happen to me in the mission before I started recording, where there was one guy I needed to beat. I think there's 2 missions before. I was trying to beat the guy, and he ran, and I tried to hit him like 3 times in a row. I missed. I missed with this thing. Okay, that doesn't have a super high chance to hit. But then I missed with the Assassin Strike, and I missed with one of these other attacks. I think Shadow Maul. And I was just like, it just reminded me of the complaints that people had. You don't see a lot of runners in missions anymore, but there used to be a lot of runners on the street, right? A lot of the street villains, if they were mugging somebody in the lower levels, they would. Is this guy ever going to go down? Come on. A lot of them would. Let's get some more endurance. Tell you, I like this power. A lot of them would. One of them would fight you, and the other one would start running. You do a little damage, and he'd start running. And like, I just need to hit him one more time to get him to go down, and you would miss him 3, 4, 5 times in a row. And it just seemed like once they were running, they put on some kind of a defense field that made them impossible to hit. And I got that. I felt that again this morning when I was doing that mission. Is there another ambush coming? The hilarious part with these guys is they ambush me, and then they run away. So how many ambushes is that? 4? This sort of thing I don't mind that much. Right? This part I don't mind, because getting that having those guys ambush and ambush and ambush you, it taxes your endurance, it taxes your health potentially. Not so much for this character, because we could recover our endurance and we could recover our health. That's really fun, but now the ambush is over. And now all I have to do is lead this NPC, who's going to get lost if I run too fast, through the map. Where are we going? Where is the... Do I have to go up? I have to go up again. I have to lead her all the way through the map. I can't fly. I can't do super jumping. I have to walk over the ground because she's going to get lost. And I have to walk her all the way through an empty map, fighting nobody, through 3 levels. And so this is what I mean by I don't think this is well implemented. Doesn't mean I hate the game, but this part, not well implemented. And again, I think one of the reasons I sometimes seem to complain a lot is because so much of the game is well implemented. I don't have to talk about it. Like, I don't generally talk about how they implemented missions so beautifully. The mission is set to your level and group size. And up until about this level, missions are an appropriate challenge for you. Now, as we level up, and maybe already, we're going to need to set it on +1 because we're a little too powerful. It's a little too easy, right? But they still tried, and up through level 30, I think they succeeded at making it so that the missions were appropriate. If I team up with you and we come in together as a 2-person group, then there will be a larger number of enemies at each spawn. There might be additional +1s. There may be more bosses or more lieutenants, right? So instead of 3 minions or 2 minions and a lieutenant, you might get 3 minions or 4 minions and a lieutenant. A couple of spots, you might get a couple minions and a boss, right? If a 3rd person comes in, you're going to get bigger spawns. You'll get a lot more bosses. Right? One of the things that happens when you're in a large group is that you find a boss in almost every spawn, just an unnamed boss, a generic one like a Stunner Chief or something like that, who's just the boss rank. It's not necessarily a named boss, but you definitely will get more of those as the group size increases, and that's because that provides an appropriate challenge for a larger group, right? So they did a beautiful job with having the game match the difficulty level to your group size and level. They did a great job. The other thing they did a really good job with is like the camera and all this stuff, the way you zoom in and out and the way the camera moves and rotates. The camera works a little differently from how most of the cameras setups were in other games when this came out in 2004. And after it came out, I was always trying to get the game that I was playing to have its camera work like City of Heroes. Alright, now we gotta find 4 captains. This can be a bit of a pain. Oh man, I forgot to turn hide on. That was stupid. Alright, we'll fight these guys. Yeah, I know you're gonna interrupt me, that's alright. Again, outdoor missions. Really cool idea. Not well implemented. What is he doing? Running on the power lines? Well, I can get on the power lines too, you know. Maybe. Alright, let's get him to come after me. So he's going to be annoying, so yeah, there we go. We'll just punch him. They made these maps too big, and there are too many needle in a haystack missions on these maps. Find the glowies. Find the 4 captains. Okay, you want to do that? Put 4 asterisks on the map where the captains are, and let me just go fight them if I want. Right? Just put an asterisk here. This is one of the captains. Let me just find them and fight them. Why do I need to hop all over the map to do that? I assume they thought it would be fun. It was fun the first, like, 9 times I did it. And then I'm kind of over it, you know? One of the things that frustrates me is this is an original mission to the game, which means, because the outdoor missions weren't implemented until... It was before City of Villains, I think, but it was not too long before. They came out, I think, with the level 40 content, 50 content, maybe a little after that. This mission was originally indoors, right? And they changed it to make it outdoors, and that annoys me, right? Because there was no reason to do that. All right, so let's keep looking for the bosses. What usually happens in a case like this, on a map like this, is that I am able to find 3 of the 4 bosses, and then I can't find the 4th one. And I end up having to just fight the whole map anyway until my tab targeting brings me into the presence of the last boss. And that takes care of him. Found a clue. Those guys didn't aggro to me, I'm surprised. There's often a boss down there. So let's head down this way. One of the nice things about the Stalker is you can kind of stay closer to the ground. Nobody's actually going to see you. So I don't have to, like, watch out for aggroing. Pretty sure one time there was a guy on this roof and I missed him. So let us confirm there is no boss on this roof. Okay, there isn't one. Sometimes there's somebody over here. So there are certain, on this map, there are certain kind of known spawn points for important NPCs, bosses, prisoners, things like that. I don't know them all by heart, but I can often find them because right here's another one. The EnviroLife captain. So these are the captains of the Freak Olympics team. Because the Freaks are having their own little Olympics. Funny and true story. This game came out in 2004, which of course was an Olympic year. And in June or July, when the Olympics were happening, I don't think any of us had gotten to this point yet. It took a long time to level back then, and we were leveling multiple characters. So the game came out at the end of April, so it was May, June. I think the Olympics, 2004 Olympics, you can look up when it was, but it was like early July. So we'd been playing a couple months. I think we were in the low, like upper teens or maybe low 20s max level. So I don't think anybody had seen this mission yet. And here's the last boss, so this is nice and easy. So we didn't know there was a Freak Olympics. Also, you have to remember the story arcs, it was just random whether you got on them or not, essentially. Like, we didn't know yet that every contact gave a story arc in the 20s because they didn't do that in the lower levels. So we were hopping contacts, we weren't necessarily working them to try and get the story arc. Story arcs came much later in the friendship level of the contact, so you had to do a lot more random and street hunt type missions in order to get the story arc from the contact. And so we didn't know that was going on. Quite independently of it, and coincidentally, and maybe this was done because they knew the Olympics were coming up, I don't really know. But our supergroup, two of the good Rob and I on our supergroup, we got together and said, let's do an Olympics for our team, for our supergroup. And so we created these events that the team could do. And we came up with ideas, and then we said, let's try it and see how hard it is to do, and whether it's something that is too easy or too hard. So one of the ideas we had, I don't remember if I've ever told this story. So one of the ideas we had, I don't remember if it was here. I don't remember where it was, but the idea was you're going to start up here on this thing, right? And I don't know how we had it. We had it timed so this thing is coming through. Rob and I actually timed this, how long this took, right? And I can't remember exactly how we did it, but at a certain point, one of us would see it coming. We'd say go. You had to run along the tracks, right? And then jump over this thing. Now you couldn't use super jump. You could, I said, what are we going to do about hurdle? He said, well, there's nothing we can do about that. But you couldn't turn on any powers. You couldn't use combat jumping or super jump or anything like that. You had to just run. I think you could use sprint, right? And you had to run along the track. And if you fell off, that's it, right? And you would stop as far as you got, right? If the train knocked you off, that was it. You'd stop as far as you got. And whoever got the farthest won. And I can't remember what the prize was. I don't know. We like bought enhancements and gave it to them or gave them influence. I can't remember what we did, but yeah, we used to do that. We did that. So we had running along the tracks. There was a spot in Steel Canyon, I think. Let me go there. I'm pretty sure there was this spot in Steel Canyon where you had to run along the fence. I think so. Right here. You had to get up on this fence and then run along it as far as you could. I can't remember what we did about the aggro. I think we came through. I think we had people coming through and clearing it. And I can't remember what we did about the column too. I think we started here. And I think the whole idea was you had to run along it and then it turns, I think, right here, right? And what we had discovered is it's very hard to stay on this thing and do the turn. You're very likely to fall off. And so let's see if anybody can do the turn, and you would turn that way, and then you would run along and then do this turn, right? So there's these two turns. I think we started there and we ran this way. And so you had these two turns and then kept going. And can you stay on it? I don't remember what the other events were. We had like 10 different events. It was like a decathlon or something, which, yeah, I think that was probably a pretty creative and fun thing to do with the game. Um, but it was, what was funny about it was, so we did this. We did our own Olympics. And then a few weeks later, as people got into the 20s, they got onto the Freak Olympics. And we were like, oh, they're doing kind of what we did. Although our Olympics were innocent, right? We were just running in and jumping and doing things like that. Their Olympics are beating people up and stealing from them and murdering people and that kind of thing, who can smash more parts of the city and that sort of thing, which is not what we were doing. Can't remember what the other events were, but I do remember running on that fence and running on the train tracks. I think both of them were done in Steel Canyon, because I guess that's about the level we were at the time, like high teens. I can't remember what other events we had, but those were fun. It was fun to do. And then when we got to the Freak Olympics, we're like, oh, wow, they're like doing what we were doing, kind of, right? Using your superpowers and having an event, right? And giving medals out and stuff. Oh, stop running. So annoying. Such cowards. So we have 5 city councilmen to save. That's 1. Now these guys, we don't delete out, they just go out on their own. That's the way it always was, right? Traditionally, that's what the other guys did too. They just ran out. Who was it? Somebody mentioned, we were talking about, I can't remember what the, is there a glowy? I thought I heard a glowy sound. Can't remember what the topic was, but they were talking about doing things in the Shadow Shard, right? Originally, they said, whoever it was said, kind of like originally you could do stuff in the Shadow, this stuff in the Shadow Shard. Oh yeah, it was about where these things come from, and they came from missions, right? After you defeated Nemesis, you got a Nemesis staff or something like that. After you defeated somebody else, you got the Black Wand. After you defeated somebody else, you got the Sands of Mu. You saw me get the Sands of Mu in the Scroll of Tieleku. And so basically these, originally the temp powers were rewards for completing story arcs or doing certain things, getting explorer badges, accolades, etc. And one of them, they said, was in the Shadow Shard. And I said, well, okay, but I don't think of anything in the Shadow Shard as original to the game, because the Shadow Shard was not original to the game. It came out much later. Speaking of that, you know, we could do the Shadow Shard with this character, but I hate doing the Shadow Shard unless you have teleport or flight, because otherwise you have to rely on their stupid jets to move you places instead of just flying, and I'm horrible at it. I just don't aim right. I went in there with Silver Phoenix a bunch of times, I think, because I was trying to do everything with her. And we may go in with this character to try and get some Explorer badges at some point. It's a shame because I like the Rularu faction. That's another cool faction, and I really like the Beholder guys, right? The Eyeball guys and stuff. They're an interesting faction, but I don't like those maps. Like, they're really cool from the perspective of, you know, a fantasy map or whatever you want, a science fiction map. They're very cool, but just not fun for me to navigate with Super Jump. And there's another council person. Would you guys mind giving me some endurance? Thanks. And their endo is totally drained. I don't think it matters though. The villains can generally do whatever they want, no matter how much endurance they have. And we'll just Shadow Mail you. And smite. There we go. Wait until you see. If you think that at this point this character is kicking some butt, which she absolutely is, guys, wait until you see what happens when she's got damage enhancers on all those powers, on all her attacks. It's going to be sick how fast she just butchers everything. This is good enough, right? But it's going to absolutely be sick how much she butchers everything when she gets into the upper levels. So now, you guys have now seen us go through the 20s. We're at level 27. So this is a pretty good representation of how this character will do, quote-unquote, in the 20s, right? Because we've done it. We've done the first 2 levels of the 20s with no SOs. And now we're doing the next couple levels, with the next 5 levels with SOs. We're only doing SOs. We have no inventions of any sort, not ATOs, no sets, no anything. You guys let me know in the comments, how do you think we're doing soloing? I feel like this character is a cinch to solo. Even the stuff that's typically challenging with this character, especially now that she can grab some endurance, if she gets, like, when they do a surround and pound to me, and you get these, like, extensive ambushes, one of the things that used to crush me on those, especially against freaks because they res and everything, just gotta zoom in, was always, I'm running out of endurance, how do I run these toggles? Right, but with this character, you know, I just drain their endurance and take it for myself. So she never really is going to run out of endurance. And I feel like she's been doing exceptionally well just against every faction. Even the Circle of Thorns, which technically are sort of her weakness because they have resistance to her negative attacks. She really didn't have any trouble with it. And one of the things that's beautiful about the Stalker is you can pretty much eliminate, if there's a mob that's frustrating or annoying or a pain to deal with because it debuffs you or whatever, like the Storm Shamans or the Death Shamans. Yeah, there are times when I miss and there are times when I don't do as much damage, but 95% of the time, I just one-shot them and they can't do anything to me. So I feel like this character is incredibly good at soloing. So the question that the one person had when I said, I don't understand why you rank the Stalkers as one of the hardest classes to solo down at the bottom, right? In the lower tier. He didn't say, he said obviously, you know, he didn't have them be as, he didn't say they were as hard as not Dominator, Defenders and Controllers. He admitted that those guys are very hard to solo because they're, and do a lot of damage and stuff. Defenders in particular, he said, one of the hardest, and then Sentinels can be very hard to solo because of the quantums and stuff. So he didn't have Stalkers at the very bottom, but he still had the Stalkers in the sort of the bottom 1/3 of the list. And I said, I don't see why you didn't put Stalkers at the very top in the very top tier, because to me, these guys are the easiest ones to solo. Period. Even easier, far easier than a Mastermind. Right? Because the problem with Masterminds are, yeah, they've got all these pets. First of all, you don't have the strong pets early on. And then second of all, the pets get lost, they screw up, they attack the wrong guy, even when you're being very careful with the where did I see another guy here? Even when you're being very careful with your commands, they can screw things up a lot, right? So there are a number of times when I accidentally aggroed with the Mastermind because of the pets, right? Or when I got myself face planted trying to heal my pets and save them so they didn't have to resummon them. And maybe I played the Mastermind wrong, I don't know, but I definitely found this is way easier. And one of the questions he had when I made that comment was, because I talked about one-shotting lieutenants and having a very easy time with bosses because you get into a really good lead. He may have misread it as me saying you can one-shot purple bosses. Nobody can one-shot a purple boss. There is nobody who can do that, including blasters. Even with snipe, I don't care. Nobody one-shots purple bosses. Doesn't happen unless you're running a whole bunch of red inspirations and stuff. But so he said, well, maybe you can do that. Or, I wasn't talking about in the 40s with sets. I was talking about as you leveling up, like how do they do in the 20s to 30s? Well, you guys tell me, how are we doing? Level 27, all we're using is SOs. We don't even have damage enhancers on any of our attacks except our Assassin Strike. Seems to me we're kicking some pretty good butt. Now, I don't know. Those of you watching me solo, is this a good soloing experience? Relative to what you would be thinking of for soloing any other AT, or a bad one? This, easy. Easier, far easier than Scrapper, far easier than a Brute. In my opinion. Yes, if you get surround and pound, it's possible. You're not going to have the defenses of the Brute or even the Scrapper, and you're not going to quite do as much damage except with the Assassin's attack. But placate. Placate is your saving grace. You can placate everybody when you're surrounded pounded and get out of there if you have to. And they won't do anything to you because you placated them. So, I don't know. I feel like these guys have a lot of options of how to handle situations that are, whereas Brutes and Scrappers essentially have two options. You can either use Trank Dart or something like that to pull and try to single pull, which is going to be way slower than assassinating things under most circumstances. Or you can just go in and do Scrapper Lock, Brute Lock, and just beat everything up. Stalkers can do both of those things, but they can also assassinate, which is way more powerful than anything else. It's such a powerful attack, and you can one-shot lieutenants. You can take a boss 3/4 of their hit point bar down, so that you only need to strike 2 or 3 more blows, 4 more blows to take them out. What am I missing? Somehow we missed somebody. Where? So I will say this. Here is the main weakness of the Stalker. Hide means they don't aggro to me. So if I run past, so I'm taking hide off. If I run past the captors of the hostage, they won't shoot at me, and I won't notice them there. So we're taking hide off, and hopefully I won't forget to turn it back on. That's the other danger, right? You turn it off to lead a hostage out, and you forget that it's not on, right? And then you walk up to somebody thinking they won't see me, and they do. But yeah, you guys tell me, right? Let me know. Give me an evaluation, right? Give me a tier. Is this S tier? Right? You know how they do A, B, C, D, E, F, and S? Right, this guy I think put the Stalkers in the bottom of B tier. And it was only like Defenders, Controllers, and I think Keldians and stuff that were C tier. Right? And Masterminds were S tier, I think, and Brutes were an A tier. But even Scrappers, I think, were B tier, and I don't know, I don't understand that. I mean, if you think Brutes are great, you should think Scrappers are great. They're basically the same class. Right? Yes, Brutes have a little more defense, but they've got Fury, and they don't do as well as Scrappers on damage until they build that Fury up. Right? Scrappers do that damage all the time, and then Scrappers get crits, which Brutes don't. By the way, Stalkers get crits. We do huge DPS. So I don't know, guys. You tell me. What do you think about this soloing experience as you've seen it in the 20s? What was the soloing experience like in the 20s? Just rate in the 20s, because that was a question. Level 21 to 30, how did it go? Right? Oh, I went down the wrong elevator. Let's try this other elevator, because I don't know where this other person is. Do you feel like this was a top tier experience? Scale of 1 to 10. 10 being a great soloing experience. This is the kind of thing I would like to solo. Looks good, looks easy, looks fun. Um, or is it a 5, mediocre, a 1, terrible experience? Right? I mean, I could see somebody saying constantly having to deal with remembering the hide being engaged and waiting for it to re-engage. What a pain in the neck. I would rather just be a brute. Fury and pound, right? Or somebody saying, yeah, but you got to do melee and it's a lot less risk to do ranged attacks. So I don't know. You guys tell me. And the other thing I don't know is, where is this last hostage? I've been everywhere, haven't I? What did I miss? Let's go out, since we're here, and come back in. I was just thinking as I went out, where was I? What zone was I in when I jumped in here? Is it going to be dangerous when I go outside without hide? But may as well re-engage hide because nothing aggroed to me. So let's see if I can find where this hostage is. I already went upstairs, right? But if we went out and came in and it respawned something, maybe. Nope. All right, guys, I'm going to pause it here. If I find the hostage, I'll bring you back. Found him. Just by tabbing, there's somebody up there. So I must have just not looked in that room. This little room right here. I ran right past it, I guess. So here is our final hostage. And that's the mission. And we've now done about an hour, so we're going to stop here. Again, please leave comments as to how you think this character's excuse me, been performing in the 20s with SOs. Scale 1 to 10 if you want, right? Or do the tiers. F is really bad, E is bad, D is pretty bad, C is meh, B is decent, but could be better. A is great, and S is top tier or whatever. Or you can grade me as just A, B, C, D, F, however you want to do it. What do you think? And I'm not asking you to grade how I'm playing, but what do you think of this solo experience? Is this a fun-looking solo experience? Do you think that soloing the Stalker in the 20s is a fun, enjoyable thing that is fairly easy and pleasant to do? Or do you feel like what you're seeing is something you would not want to do? Let me know in the comments. Till next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Heroes soloing the Stalker on the Homecoming server.